I'm going to cover the getting started guide for Jets with the API project in this video. To do that, we're going to click on getting started here at the top, and then it gives you 3 different options. We're going to click on the API project option in the middle. So there's a bunch of steps here, and we're going to go through all of them. I'm going to cover the first 2 steps pretty briefly because I have some videos actually covering some of this already. Next step is install Jets. It's just gem install Jets, and then you get the framework installed like that. Next is configure your AWS credentials. So this is the way I recommend configuring your AWS credentials. And I have a video kind of covering this. So again, I'm kind of skip over this part right here. So we can get to the meat and potatoes, which is generating a new basically project so we can basically create an API. So the first command is Jets new demo mode API. Go ahead and grab that, and then we'll run it right here in the terminal. And what that does is it generates a starter project structure, and also runs, I guess, bundle right here. So once that's generated, we're going to cd into demo, and then we're going to explore a little bit. Let's go expand it out, config application, and then I'm just showing you where you configure some application settings, and you can set the project name here and the mode, and you can see it loads the defaults, and there's more documentation on all these kind of settings here. And I also want to show you under environments here, you can actually configure or override your application settings on an environmental basis. So you can have like development and production settings. So that covers this page. Next step, review the project. So we're going to look at some code finally. So app controllers, application controller. So this is like your main base application controller. So all your other controllers will generally inherit from this controller. So if you need like common methods or settings, you put it all in this controller. And you can see this controller inherits from Jets controller base. So that's what that's about. And then we're going to actually create API now by using a scaffold generator. So I'm going to grab this command and run Jets generate scaffold, and post is the model name, and then some fields like title, body, and publish. So that's going to generate a scaffold for us. And once that's generated, we can actually go open it up and take a quick look at it. Okay? So you can see it's a post controller, it inherits from the application controller. There's some before actions on it. Then there's essentially all the CRUD methods: index, show, create, and update, destroy, and all that. Okay? So that looks like we've covered this page. And next is local testing. So in order to test, we actually now need to finally migrate and create a database. So I'm going to grab this command to create the database and migrate at the same time. So that's going to run, and what that does is it runs this migration right here that was generated by the scaffold. All right, so it created basically a post table with these 3 fields right there with some timestamp fields too. So next step is we need to actually have some test data. So I have this db seeds here example. So we're going to grab that, go in here, and create new file seeds. Now seeds is plural, and then the command itself is db seed singular. Okay, that always I sometimes have trouble remembering that one. So Jets db seed is going to now create the 2 post records. So the post records have been created. Next is it shows we should run this runner command here. It's a quick way to confirm that the records have been seeded or the records were created successfully. And you can see it should return 2, and there it's returning 2. So that's good. Database records are in there. Now we can start a server up and test everything. So Jets server. So this is how you kind of test locally. It just starts up essentially a rack server, and then once that starts up, you can actually open up this URL here, and you can see right now that's the home page, and you can see the post URL, which has the 2 records that I basically just seeded. So that looks pretty good to me. Here it's showing us some curl commands. So I thought this would be useful, just having a bunch of curl commands to show you how you test APIs, kind of essentially. Okay, so I'm going to actually open up another terminal now and run the first curl command. That -s is just silent, just so you don't see like that download output. Then on Python JQ, just make the output look a little prettier. And basically, you can see the 2 post records that we seeded in the database here. There's some other CRUD commands here. Oh, I do want to point out, while we're kind of curling the right-hand side there, you can see that it's actually logging on the left-hand side. So you can see kind of requests kind of coming in. That's what the documentation is kind of saying. So now it's just saying, okay, let's go ahead and create a data.json file so we can actually basically create some records. So I created that file there, and now let me just open up. It's right here, and then just paste that in there. So we're going to create a post 3 record now. So here's the curl command to do that. Basically, -x will tell it what method to use, where I'm using post method. Here's the data that I want to feed it into the command, and then basically I'm going to hit the post kind of endpoint there. You see there's some output there, and there's also some logs. So at this point we have now an additional record. See, we have 3 records here. Let's make this a little bit bigger here. Right there. Okay, and now next step is let's update it too. So let's go ahead and run this command now to update it. Before I actually update it, I actually have to update this data JSON file. So edit 1. Okay? So let's run that curl command now. So that should have edited it. And so let's curl basically index again. You can see edit 1 now. Okay? So that's all working. So that looks pretty good. You can actually delete with curl too. So let's go ahead and do this for completeness here. Curl-x delete, and that basically delete the last, the third record, and then we should see only 2 records now. So that's looking pretty good. So we went through all of this. Okay, so that's how you test locally. Next step is we have to deploy the AWS. In order to deploy the AWS in Lambda, Lambda needs a database that has access to. So well, this is a local database on my machine here, so that's not going to work. So what I recommend is actually set up an RDS database. And for this video, I've already set one ahead of time, but I actually have another video where I set up RDS database, and you kind of check that out if you need to. But that's what I would recommend kind of setting up in order to do all this testing. And then once you kind of have the database set up, then you actually have to set up an environmental variable. So it's kind of like 12-factor apps. Jets basically takes in a bunch of environmental variable configurations. One of them is database URL, because that's what database config is actually configured to. If you kind of look at this right here, database YML, see, it's looking at database URL right here. Okay? So what we need to do is configure a database YML. So I actually have that right here. I just had it so I could do this video, and then you could throw in here. Now if you throw in here, it's gonna be used for all environments because it's .env. That's like a common env file. And there's more documentation on env files on the Jets doc site there. But I'm actually going to show you another kind of way to do this also that's kind of useful, because I want to use the database that's local on my machine here, and I don't want that to kind of muck it up. So you can actually go .env and usually production, so you have something else that's different. In this case, I want development, but actually my local environment is the same as development for basically deploying on Lambda here in this case. So I'm actually go do .env.development.remote. Okay? Then I'm going to throw in here actually. So that .remote basically just says use that one only when you're deployed to AWS Lambda. Okay, so that's kind of a neat way to kind of set that. Okay. So next is we got actually run Jets deploy. Okay, so let's go ahead and do Jets deploy now. I'm gonna Control-C that server and run Jets deploy. So what it's gonna do now is it's gonna generate actually a bunch of CloudFormation templates, because Jets basically builds CloudFormation templates and lets CloudFormation do the hard work of deploying. And inside those CloudFormation templates are all your resource definitions, basically Lambda functions and API gateway, and kind of basically the serverless resources. And then CloudFormation will deploy that for us and kind of manage everything. So that's kind of what it does. Jets also bundles up your app code here and uploads it to S3 bucket that it's actually creating right now, as you can kind of see. Let's actually look at the console here. Let's go to the console here, and then look at CloudFormation console right here. You can see demo dev, it says create complete, because what it does is actually, it's a little meta. It creates a stack here for the S3 bucket, and then now it has a stack that you can upload code to, and then it basically deploys again. This only happens in the initial deploy. And then it's going to deploy again right here. You can see update in progress. So you're going to see, if I refresh here, it should say update in progress. Now it's creating basically all the resources by essentially evaluating and translating your Jets code into CloudFormation kind of resources in this case. You know, it might be a bit much when you're looking at it for the first time, but pretty much this is all handled for you by Jets. And once you get used to it, it's actually pretty straightforward. So I'm going to close this out, and we're going to kind of see resources spinning up here as I refresh a couple times. So you can see the API gateway resources have some of it has already been created. Okay. And now the Jets controller is creating right here. If you click on that, you click on resources here, you can see that actually the resources kind of being created. So you can see it creates a demo dev controller. So it creates one controller to handle all your basically controller requests or controller actions. Okay? Everything gets routed to here. Okay? So we're going to actually click on that, and we're going to explore a little bit. I think I'm going to the next step. So let me kind of see where we're at right here. So deployment, that's what we're doing right now. And review the deployment. Yeah, so I'm actually going through the next step where it says review basically CloudFormation console, API gateway, Lambda, and then we're going to do some testing again. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go back to Lambda function here. You can see here's the Lambda function. Here's kind of the entryway. It's called the handler in the AWS world. So basically the handler is like the entry point. So, and then what Jets does is it actually generates a shim or a handler shim that will make sure that the interface for the entry point is exactly what AWS Lambda expects or requires. And then what it does is eventually calls Jet's process, and then basically it will pass it to your controller action here, which is wherever it needs to get routed to. So that's essentially how it works. Like for the most part, you don't really have to deal with a shim. What you're going to be dealing with is application code. That's where your focus is going to be looking at this. And interesting to point out is you can see I'm already an editor here. I can actually edit this code and click deploy and everything, which we'll kind of do in a bit. But let's see where the deployment is right now as I kind of been explaining here. Let's go back to stacks here. It looks like this deployment is completed. So that's the console. Oh, that's the Lambda console. And here's the terminal. It's also complete on that side. Okay. So now that it's done, let's go back to see what we were supposed to do on instructions here. So went through here. Okay, we should actually look at API Gateway real quickly. So let's look at CloudFormation stacks right here quickly and click on API Gateway, and you can see resources, and you click on here. So that takes us to API Gateway. You can get there by clicking on API Gateway and everything too, but I find it easier just to find the resources on the CloudFormation console and then click on there. So you can see basically it creates pretty much only 2 routes, but you can think about it as one route, and then basically it passes it to Jets, and then the Jets are actually routing engine will kind of do the heavy lifting there. So next step here is Lambda console. Okay, we reviewed the Lambda console already. We looked at this. We opened up the post controller. Now we're gonna actually test the Lambda function. So this is one way to test. I probably will only test this way when I need to debug at this level. So it's pretty useful, I guess, to show you. But usually I will be testing with curl or browser or Postman or something. But here, what I'm gonna do is click test here. It's going to give us basically a pop-up that says it needs a test structure. So what I did is I grabbed a test structure. This test structure is kind of what API Gateway would pass to Lambda. Because what's happening is your request has come from you, like a curl or something. Then it's go to API Gateway. Then API Gateway in turn is going to pass that to AWS Lambda. So this is like an example of what API Gateway will pass to AWS Lambda. And this is a very minimal example, just essentially what's needed for things to work here, but API gateways can have a lot more information like headers, parameters, body, all that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna hit save here, and now we can click test, and what that's gonna do is it should return there. It returns the status code 200. So API or Lambda here for the Jets work here is returning what's called the API Gateway Lambda proxy structure, which is essentially status code, body, and then headers here essentially. And here it has actually the body. So this is the expected result that is going to go and sending it back up to API Gateway. And this, again, most of the stuff you're going to be doing is you're going to be debugging kind of actually by looking at just your actually CloudWatch logs here, like you can see it down here, versus kind of this level of debugging. But I'm just showing you this so you can understand how it works underneath the hood. So next is we tested all that. So you can actually see it via CloudWatch logs too. Okay. And then testing with curl. So let's actually grab the URI now, or URL. So I'm gonna go ahead and run that just so you can see how it kind of works. And then I'm also gonna follow this tip right here. There's a little tip here. You can actually export it, or I'm usually using export because I'm using fish shell, but you can actually just set an environmental variable by using this one-liner here, because you can actually have a format and basically just grab exactly what we need, which is the URL. So if I echo like URL now, you're gonna see that that's set. And now I'm using that to do some curl commands. So we did this locally earlier. Now we're actually doing it remotely. So let's do it remotely. And at the same time, what I'm gonna do is actually show you Jet's logs -F2 and follow. I think this is covered in the next documentation page, but I'm gonna show you right now. So you actually tail the logs as it's happening here on Lambda. So that's pretty cool. Watch this. So I'm in curl now, the endpoint, and you can see that's okay. So that returned already, and the logs take a little time. Okay, but it's all asynchronous, and it's gonna be coming back, and you're gonna see it kind of coming on the right hand side soon. So you can see that curl here, and then there it came. So you can actually basically do centralized logging essentially for free here. So we did that curl command, and then if we kind of do all these other curl commands, you're gonna see that it's gonna create some more records and all that kind of stuff. So let's go ahead. Oh, I did that curl command, and I guess that cheat sheet does not have like a silent flag, and then doesn't pipe to JQ, which would be very useful for just understanding or seeing it more clearly. So I'm gonna post this data again, and I think the data, I have an edit in it already. So let me get rid of that first. There we go. And then now I'm gonna create a new record. and then we're gonna post it again, and there you can see post 3, and then we're gonna update it now. So update it, edit, and then now let's grab the next curl command here, and then we'll show it working on API gateway. And you can see, oh, what happened there? So post put data. Oh, because it's the ID is 4 because I've used this before, so I think the ID was actually 4. So let me just show before I put that curl. So let's go ahead and see this. You see how this ID is actually 4. So here we're gonna have to change this ID to 4. So if your IDs are different, that's what you have to do too. Okay, now we can curl again, and you can see that edit 1 went through. Cool. And then we can actually do delete too, and delete again, it has to be 4 here too because I've used this database before. There, delete is true, so now it should go to only 2 records there, and you can see it kind of live streaming on the right hand side. So that's pretty cool, huh? You can actually see the live stream with the missing record too. Next is update the project. So now we're gonna actually edit code live. So this is one of the cool things about Lambda, I guess. Maybe cool, maybe not, depending on, I guess, your opinion. But what you can actually do is you can actually edit code as if you're editing the server in the console right here in basically a browser. So I'm going to go puts debugging call right here, click deploy. And I recommend this for like live debugging if like, you really need to debug, but you want to codify things because now it's not going to match with your code. Then instead of testing there, I'm actually just curl it here. And then on the right hand side here, what we're going to see is we should see that new debugger statement, that the put statement that is that I threw in there. So any moment now it's going to kind of come here, then you can see debugging puts index call. So that's pretty neat, huh? So you can actually change code on the fly on all the servers essentially. Next step here is the logs I showed you already, like updating codes. Now I'm just emphasizing that in this documentation, that we made some live changes. So it's not going to reflect what we have here. So what you want to do is actually make sure your code matches. And then I'm just actually throw a slightly different text here just to show that it's actually completely different, that it has been deployed properly. So basically we are codifying our changes that we made live now, except I made a slight change and then I just ran just deploy because I'm kicking off another deploy because I want that to basically be kind of replaced. And then next step is going to be deleting project. So let's wait until kind of this deploys real quick. And then we can actually see again in the console. You just go CloudFormation console here, click on stacks. I'm going to X this one out just to make this a little bit bigger. I like to kind of make that easier to read. So you can see updating project, yes, control. You can click on that. You can see events here too. And you can see the events kind of, it's basically updating that Lambda function that I just changed. And now you can see update complete. So that means if you go here and kind of click refresh, okay, it's just going to say, it should be say debugging again. Okay, that's the slight change I made just to make sure that we can confirm this. And then there's a reload thing, but you can see debugging, yeah. So the code basically got deployed successfully. So and and still kind of wrapping deployment up here, but you can actually see that the Lambda code deploy completely successfully. And I think the last step, is there anything else in here? I don't think there's anything else in here. So I think the last step is just we're gonna go over deleting the project and kind of cleaning everything up. Once this deploy is actually finished here, it's going to wrap up. It takes a couple minutes or so to deploy, but let's just kind of wait this out because I think it's almost done. But you can see, hopefully, I'm explaining basically your Jet's code is being translated to essentially AWS resources, and deployment is all essentially handled for you. So there it is, basically the deployment finished, and now I'm going Jet's delete. It's going to prompt us, unless you saw that -y option, you could bypass the prompt there. But it says, are you sure you want to delete your project? I say yes, enter, or Y, enter. And now it's going to delete everything. And the way it deletes everything is at first, I guess we should see it right here. It deletes everything in your S3 bucket. That's the bucket that just kind of originally created to store our code artifacts. So it needs to empty that out, or else when we delete CloudFormation, basically stacks, it's not going to delete cleanly. So it empties that out entirely, and then it deletes essentially the parent stack, and then in turn all the other stacks are deleted, and basically all the resources, the API gateway resources, the Lambda functions, all the permissions that kind of need to be created, they all get wiped away cleanly. So you end up with a completely clean slate, and that's the power of actually codifying all this, right? you actually clean up everything nicely and neatly. So you can kind of let's go back to CloudFormation before it disappears here and kind of refresh here. You can see it's basically deleting the last stack, and now it's gone already. So this stack is already stale, it's gone. And you can see the delete now is completely done. And that's it. So that takes you through how to create a Jets API project and going through the Get Started guide there. Hopefully that was helpful. Thanks.